the very latest in the Trump, FBI, Mar-a-Lago, DOJ saga here. Let's go ahead and put this up on the screen. The government, as part of an official sort of legal filing this week, pushing back on the Trump team's efforts to secure a special master for this case. As part of that rather extensive filing, I'll get more into the details now, released this photo, which is quite explosive. It shows a lot of one secret and a bunch of top secret documents, at least these sort of, you can see the cover sheets of them strewn across the floor. This appears to be in Trump's office in Mar-a-Lago. Kelly O'Donnell says the DOJ filing submitted tonight includes a photo showing the obvious classification markings on documents seized at Mar-a-Lago. Also, LOL, in the corner of the photo is a bunch of framed Time magazine covers. Classic Trump.
I saw those in Trump's office. I saw those in the Oval Office, so some things have not changed.
Yes, so classic Trump. Trump, of course, responding to this quite aggressively. In fact, his whole world seems to be very upset about this photo because it is quite damning to see all of these documents laid out that he had kept in his possession even after his lawyers had attested to the fact that they had exhaustively searched for everything and turned everything over. Here was his initial reaction. Go ahead and put this up on the screen. He says, terrible the way the FBI during the raid of Mar-a-Lago threw documents haphazardly all over the floor, perhaps pretending it was me that did it, and then started taking pictures of them for the public to see, thought they wanted them kept secret, lucky I declassified. Lot going on there. I mean, they've been really leaning into this argument, Saagar, his side, that like this was somehow meant to show that Trump just had these documents laid out on the floor, but I didn't interpret the photo that way at all. I just interpreted it as this is kind of standard procedure when you go in and do this kind of search. You document, you know, what evidence is found. So they took this photo and they include it. But yeah, they're like really up at arms at the idea that there's an insinuation that Trump's office is messy.
I have no idea whether this is standard procedure or not. I do think it's probably a little bit staged. But listen, I mean, are they there or are they not there?
Right.
Because I think that's probably all that materially matters
and then
in court.
The next truth was like, I had all these documents in a carton.
Yes, I have that here.
As if
I can read that.
Exculpatory.
So this is the latest.
You're admitting you had those documents.
Right.
You just had them in a carton, as if that makes it better, Saagar.
Yeah, so late last night, here was the truth. Quote, there seems to be confusion as to the picture, in quotes, don't know why that's in quotes, where documents were sloppily thrown on the floor and then released photographically for the world to see as if that's what the FBI found when they broke into my home. Wrong. They took them out of cartons and spread them around on the carpet, making it look like a big find for them. They dropped them, not me. Very deceiving, and remember, we could have had no representative, including lawyers present during the raid. They were told to wait outside. So as some people have pointed out, Trump is so annoyed about the optics of the photo that he is actually ignoring the legal implications of acknowledging that he had these in his office, which again, I mean, I'm not saying it's appropriate or whatever for the DOJ to do this. I think it was clearly a photo meant to be leaked. I'm not even leaked to the press. It was just released publicly.
Yeah.
That being said, skeevy FBI tactics aside, it doesn't matter in a court of law. The court of law is, did you have it in your office after your lawyer said that you would return them? Because that seems to be the case, Krystal.
Whether or not they were on the floor or in a carton, it doesn't really legally make a difference.
Yes.
But yeah, it's very clear that he was upset and the people around him upset by the optics of this because, you know, pictures do speak very loudly. And so when you just see it all laid out there, I think it is fairly, you know, it definitely sends a statement. And there's zero doubt that the government intended with this filing, which was quite, I would say, aggressive in its language and much less muted than some of their previous filings have been, they clearly intended to speak to the American people, not just, you know, argue a narrow legal point over whether or not there should be a special master in this case. So that's extremely noteworthy, and I want to get into some of the specifics here, but before I do that, I am becoming more convinced that they are actually going to indict Trump. Because, I mean, what really sort of, from a laywoman's perspective, what really sort of tipped me in that direction is how aggressive this filing was, how much they intended to really kind of lay on a public case here and rebut some of the talking points that have come out of the Trump side. That made me feel like, oh, you know, this was not just an effort of like, we got to get these documents back and this was the only way we could do it. it does feel more and more like they are truly building a case towards especially obstruction, because that's part of what has increasingly come out. That's part of what is revealed in this latest filing is, there was a messaging coming out of the Trump team that like, oh, we were working with, we were cooperating, we invited them in, Trump greeted them, we said go and find whatever you want to find. Well, the government very, pointedly sort of rebuts that, saying that they were, not greeted as heroes or liberators, as was kind of indicated by Trump. They were barred from certain areas of the building, including that storage room, according to the government, again, in contradiction to what Trump said. And then it's now been reported that his lawyer, I think her name is Christina Bobb, is that her name, is the one who signed that attestation saying that we looked everywhere. We did an exhaustive, diligent search. This was everything we could come up with. Well, then the government in just a few hours was able to come up with far more documents than had originally been turned over as responsive to the government's subpoena.
I agree with you, Krystal. Let's go to the next one up there on the screen. I mean, as you said, I encourage you guys to go and read this whole thing for yourself, but the aggression in the special master case and the laying out consistently, they're basically revealing that the lawyer had signed that attestation, then saying that they found those specific documents in the office. I mean, I guess the only way that Trump could possibly find his way out of this is if he could say that his lawyer lied, not necessarily on his behalf, but that would require her to fall on her sword.
Right.
I agree.
But when he makes comments acknowledging,
Exactly.
like, I had these documents in my cartons, makes it harder to just pin the blame on the lawyer.
And given the reporting that we currently have, whether it's true or not, but nobody involved has denied it, that Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch was telling Trump, no, you can hang on to these things. That would show a willful knowledge of, I am hanging on to these as I instruct my counsel to say otherwise to the Department of Justice. Now, you can put just prosecution and all of that aside. I'm just telling you that the people that I follow, even on the right, who I trusted a lot through Russiagate, Andrew McCarthy specifically, who, if you're a Republican, he was on Fox News all the time. He was very against Russia.
He
Mueller,
wrote a whole book about it.
He wrote an entire book about it, about how it was unjust. He is now saying he thinks Trump will be indicted. Again, you put whether you think he should be or not, on the way the Department of Justice is behaving, on the facts of the case, as we know them now, given the photos, given the attestation, given the filings, it's going to be a tough way to see Trump wriggle his way out of this one.
Yeah.
Will it still happen? Possible.
Possibly.
Possible. I don't know.
And it's possible,
They may never charge him.
It's
possible
possible
too.
the DOJ, just decides like, this is too hot. I mean, it's pretty clear at this point that's what the Trump team is mostly betting on.
Right.
They're not really betting on any sort of legal strategy because they've been all over the map. They really initially sort of bet the house on this declassification strategy of like, president can declassify anything. So, these documents, I of course declassified all of them, so nothing to see here.
Right.
Doesn't really matter. And so when that legs were cut out from under that defense, they've really struggled to come up with something that is going to make sense from a legal perspective. You can even see in the response to this photograph that Trump tries on a couple of different defenses here. I mean, at first there was sort of an insinuation of like, maybe the FBI planted these documents here. We don't know where these documents came from. And then in the very next truth, he acknowledges, no, I had these documents, but they were neatly in cartons instead of splayed across the floor. So they're struggling in terms of a legal strategy. What the effort is today to secure the special master, which we've kind of gone into in detail with you, they're arguing that a special master is required to sort through which documents are subject to executive privilege based on his status as former president. Very murky legal ground there because a lot of people say, okay, well, you're not president anymore, so the person who gets to decide that is the current incumbent administration, but that's what they're trying to argue today. But, as we pointed out before, the government's saying, hey, we already went through all these documents and we had our own filter team go through for attorney-client privilege, something different. Those documents have already been pulled out. We've already reviewed everything that we have here, so this is kind of irrelevant. The whole strategy, as far as I can tell from a legal perspective on the Trump team, is just to try to slow things down, try to muddy the water, try to throw up as many sort of procedural hurdles as they can. But in terms of a comprehensive legal case, it's not clear to me what direction they're going in. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but just reading the analysis, reading the filings, trying to, evaluate this as best I can, it seems pretty clear the real strategy they're leaning into is more of a political one to basically say, and this is what Trump, back-channeled to Merrick Garland, like, hey, things are pretty hot. You wouldn't want them to get out of control. Lindsey Graham going on television saying there's going to be riots in the street. So sort of pushing on that button saying like, you don't want to go here because it could be really divisive, it could be really dangerous, it could be really explosive in terms of our national politics, and trying to scare, people who are sort of like naturally risk averse, Merrick Garland and other bureaucrats in the DOJ, sort of naturally risk averse people into holding their fire, even though, at this point, it's incredibly clear if this was anyone other than Trump, they would already be indicted.
Yeah, and let's put the final element there up on the screen. DOJ saying, or likely based on Bloomberg reporting, to wait past midterms to reveal any Trump charges. Theoretically, they could actually file charges under seal before the election and then unseal it ahead of time. But given the election policy on not to make any cases ahead of a major election, even if Trump is not necessarily on the ballot, that's not something that they are likely to do. So there you go.
This was another item that pushed me in the direction of they are going to indict him. Because the fact that they're leaking this to the press of like, well, an indictment's not coming right now.
Right.
Rather than if they really wanted to tamp things down and, indicate like, oh, this is really just about getting these documents back. We're not planning on charging the former president. I feel like that would be getting leaked to these reporters. And the New York Times had a version of this as well. They said something like, the DOJ isn't close to charging Trump, also indicating like this will come further down the road. But it doesn't have any indication they're not gonna do it. Just like don't expect it right away, basically.
At this point, we're all Harry Potter in the tea leaves class.
Yeah.
We're all just like, what's going on?
This did
What's
push
inside?
me more in the direction of they're serious about this.
I think they're serious, and I even put the DOJ aside, and I look at the quote unquote outside analysts like McCarthy, and like when McCarthy says he's going to get indicted, I'm like, wow, that personally was like the most significant one for me, because people like Brad who we had on the show, like Brad has always kind of been that way.
Yeah, he's a resistance guy.
Right,
I mean, that is his framework, which we try to be upfront about, even as he is an expert in the specific area.
But it's like when I see the skeptics either go silent or start attacking the DOJ over the photo, and then I see the ones who I really trust and have always thought intellectually honest or Judge Knapp, we'll talk about that too, who was on Fox, got fired from Fox I forget exactly why he pissed Trump off, but anyway, I've always liked and trusted Judge Knapp as well. When those two say an indictment is coming, again, some of the biggest Russiagate, Mueller skeptics that existed, I listen.
And Judge Napolitano is opposed to Trump being indicted, but he's just looking at the case and that's been laid out and what the government is saying and the way they're approaching this, and he was quite clear that he believes that he will be indicted. I'll tell you another thing, just again as a layperson, that seems to me to argue in that direction is Trump's lawyers are now in pretty significant legal jeopardy. And so if you end up with a situation, like I feel like it'd be difficult to indict the lawyers, but then let him off the hook.
Right.
So that's now that you have people who don't have any sort of claim of like, presidential protection or we should treat them differently, who were pretty clearly possibly in violation of the law here with regards to testing that, oh yeah, of course we did this exhaustive search and turned up everything we could. I don't know, that to me also makes it more difficult for the government to kind of come up with a case for not charging him given what has come out and what they've laid down at this point. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.